Hey everyone, it's Canon here and I'm back with a brand new video, and today I wanted to share 5 lies that millionaires tell. And the reason why is because I've seen so much advice online. Like if you've been on like Twitter or YouTube or maybe even Instagram, I don't know, you'll have seen so much advice given from these like teenage or 20 something year old millionaires, and a lot of it's just completely false. And I'm gonna prove it in this video. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. He says wearing the Shopify hoodie. I got this for free. Please don't overthink it. But yeah, let's get straight into it. So the reason why, first of all, the reason I wanted to talk about this is because it's false. But the second reason is because it's actually very dangerous. And people don't realize that the advice that you take can shift your life dramatically. Like, we are mimetic creatures, so we kind of absorb, we don't really act originally. We kind of act based on tribal inputs. I can make a separate video about that. So when you take advice, and if you haven't seen my video about how to filter advice, you can have a look at that if that interests you. If you take advice that's not suitable for you, you're going to be screwed. It's going to make life a lot worse for you. So it's very important that you be careful who you take advice from. That's the first thing, including myself. Like, seriously, like I strongly encourage you to question everything that I say from this video. Like, if there's things you disagree with, please disagree with them. Think about them. Like, have that thought. That's a good thing. But yeah, let's get straight into the video. So the first lie is that the only way to become successful is you have to start a business. This is completely false. Like, I don't know where this came from. Like, when people think that you can't become successful as an employee, that's just completely stupid. Like, it's actually really stupid how much this advice is purported. Because, first of all, not everyone should be an entrepreneur. That's just not a good. It's not a good idea. I mean, it would not work in a theoretical perspective. If every single person in the world became an entrepreneur, you'd have all you would have is you'd have a bunch of like 1 to 4 person co-founding team companies, and that's it. You wouldn't have mid-market or enterprise companies. So it just doesn't work. Like, that's the first thing. And the second thing is that it's also false because let's consider why a person who starts a business, why these gurus online who give this advice that you have to start a business to become successful, let's consider why that's even the case, right? So, say example, I'm going to use a whiteboard just because it's here. I probably don't need to, but I'm going to do it anyway because I don't use it enough anyway. So, for example, you have a business and it does $100,000 a year, and you can't even see that because I've just written incredibly small. Where's my tissue paper? There you go. Okay, I'm not going to draw it. So, example, you have a business that does $100,000 a year, right? After taxes, right? You do not get to pocket all of that income anyway. You get to take a salary from that. So that's the first thing. So starting a business doesn't mean you're wealthy, but because of the cash flow that comes in. That's a whole different thing. But the reason why people become wealthy with businesses is because of the equity they hold in that business, right? So let me say that again. The reason that people become wealthy through businesses and successful through businesses is because of the equity that they hold in that business. Like, that's it. Like, if you have like 10% of $10 million, that's $1 million. If you have 100% of $10,000, you have $10,000, right? So, as an employee, at least in tech companies, I don't know if this is the case in finance companies. It might be, it might not be. Someone let me know. But at least in tech companies, if you work in companies that are, let's say, early to mid-market, you generally will receive some sort of stock option plan, right? Where you get some stock, even after like a company goes public, you will still get some stock options that will vest over a few years. So you get equity in a company, right? The way you become like successful, like quote unquote successful, is equity. And that doesn't necessarily always translate to having and owning a company like yourself and being the runner and the front runner and whatever. Like, that's just not true. You can be an employee and make a lot of money. There's actually there's quite a few people that I know that joined a lot of these startups that at like Series A stage, where they've raised their Series A funding round, and there's maybe like 10, 12 people there. They came in like number 15 or whatever, 20, 25, 30, 40, maybe even 50. And few years later, the company's valuation goes up and up and up, and so does the value of their stock. And then over time, when they vest it, they're able to cash out. And they did not own the business. They weren't the CEO, they weren't the founder or any of that stuff. They were an employee, right? So when people think of employee, they think of person with 9 to 5, which is correct, right, in most cases. But especially in tech, you don't have to become an entrepreneur to become successful. You can actually just become an employee at a company that's like maybe seeded, so meaning they've raised a seed round or even a pre-seed round, up to Series B, maybe even Series C. The best, probably the sweet spot is probably between seed and Series A. Like that's probably the best place to go, because at seed you've got the highest upside, but you've also got a lot of downside. But at Series A, the company's found product market fit. They're doing revenue, and there's a higher chance of success. Essentially, you've got a higher chance of success with a Series A than a seed, but the value of the amount of equity that you'll get is lower at a Series A than a seed. I can make a whole video about this if you want me to. Just let me know. So yeah, that's the first piece of advice, that you have to have a business to become successful. Complete falsehood. You don't. It's equity that translates into that success, not the whole being your own boss thing. Like, I mean, it's cool if you want to do that. Like, yeah, go for it. But to purport that idea is completely false, and that's why. So, number 2 is following your passion. Now, this is a really interesting one, because you hear a lot of like leaders, right, say, yes, you need to follow your passion, follow your dream, and that makes sense, right? Like from a contextual point, it's like, yeah, like I'm going to succeed if I follow my passion. I'm going to keep going, keep going. But I think everyone's kind of misunderstood what passion actually is. So people think passion is, oh, this is the thing that I'm interested in, and therefore I am passionate about it. No. Passion, like we can put this into a formula. Passion equals curiosity multiplied by progress divided by time. So essentially, if you have high curiosity and you make a lot of progress in a very low amount of time, your passion is going to be very high, right? So, because the whiteboard's here, I'm going to actually use it. So curiosity is equal to, wrong way around, sorry. Passion is equal to curiosity times progress, let's put this in brackets, because why not, divided by time. And you still, I don't know if you can see that. If you can, then cool. But it looks very small on my phone that I'm recording with. But yeah, that's essentially what passion is. So if you want to follow your passion, find something that you're curious about, see if you can make a lot of progress in a very small amount of time, and suddenly you will find that you are passionate. Like, seriously. like there's a lot of things where people are just not passionate, not quote unquote passionate from the traditional sense that they're like super like their heart and soul is invested into it, but they're still pretty successful. You know what I mean? And why is that? Because they were curious about something, they made progress in a very small amount of time. Like, and as time goes up and progress goes down, your passion goes down too, because you kind of like, what ends up happening is you're kind of just beating at a wall that isn't giving you anything back. But if you're getting feedback and people are like, people are vibing with what you're doing, then suddenly your passion's going to go up, right? So that's what passion is, and that's something that needs to be understood as not something that you are emotionally invested in per se, right? Because again, like with this formula, again, it's still sort of arbitrary, right? We don't have an exact like numerical measurement for curiosity or progress. The only thing we have is time, and that's literally it. But for these two, they're completely like subjective. Like curiosity, how curious are you? Like what are you gonna say? I'm 9.5 out of 10. It's like, take a guess, you know what I mean? Take a guess. But just think of this in a more abstract like concept, right? I think of this more conceptually, that if you make more progress on something that you're curious about in a short space of time, you're going to be more passionate about it. That's just how it works. Right, so that's the second lie that millionaires tell. The third is be patient. Now this is an interesting one, because you hear this all the time, especially like, yeah, be patient for results. Yeah, And the convenient thing is that they also forget the part that things that take, so yeah, what you hear is great things take time, right? You've had it. Yes, this thing is going to take such a long time to build. You just got to be patient and keep working hard. What they also conveniently leave out is that a lot of things that are quote unquote successful generally also had a lot of initial success. Like people go like to Amazon and go, oh wow, Amazon's this big company. It took 30 years to get here. But they'll also conveniently leave out the part where they actually, like where Jeff Bezos raised $1 million to get the business off the ground initially. And in their first week of launch, they did 20K in revenue in that first week. And then they kept on growing the revenue. Yes, they were losing money, but they were able to raise enough venture capital so that they were, they were able to have a long enough runway to get to profitability. But people conveniently leave out the fact that in the first week that it did work, like really, really quickly, and they had enough early believers that were willing to finance the company. Like, you know what I mean? There's like, you're looking at everyone's chapter 30, you're like, yeah, I'm just going to work on this thing, I'm going to take my time, and it's going to work out. Well, you also want to look at your initial traction as well. Like, are people actually interested in what you're doing? Yes, no, yes, great. Keep going, keep getting feedback. No, okay, iterate, pivot a little bit, and then figure out ways that you can, satisfy market demand. Right? That's pretty much all it is. It also, the other side point that the other point I've just got on my screen right now, on my Notion doc, is that when it comes to being patient, people also conveniently leave out the fact that, at least not most people, I'd say Tom Billier is actually a very good advocate of being impatient. So you want to be impatient for action, especially for high ROI activities. So that's my addition to that. Not just impatient for action, but you want to be impatient for taking action on high ROI activities. But you want to be patient enough for results to materialize. But you also want to act, rationally. You also want to act logically and think strategically in the sense that, hey, yes, I'm impatient, I'm working hard at doing these things, but if you're, if you're doing something that no one cares about and you can't sell it to somebody, then you should figure out exactly how you can quickly just make some small shifts around so that you can do that. Right? So that's the third thing that millionaires lie about constantly. I guess that's just mainly a shot. That's not me taking a shot at Gary Vee, by the way. Like, I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. He's a really cool guy. But I kind of feel like other people as well have also said, be patient, things will come, great things will come to those who wait, and all that kind of nonsense. It's false. It just is. Great things do take time, right, to materialize to tremendous astronomical levels of success, but they also conveniently leave out the initial foundations where things actually did work to get to that point. Like, you can't build a skyscraper. Whoops. I always drop my pen in every single video. You can't build a skyscraper without building the fundamental block, like the foundations, right? So, yeah, that's just my take on it. The fourth one is that you should drop out of school or quit your job and take tremendous amount of risks. And this is just completely stupid and false. Like, there is very, 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 very few people in the world who have ever succeeded by taking stupid amounts of risks without calculation. Like, that just hasn't happened. Like, the only exception that I can think of is Steve Jobs, and that's literally it. There is no one else. Like, you can name anybody else. If you think of, Elon Musk, for example, he hedged his bets. Like, and that's what you should do. You should hedge your bets and only ever take risks if they're very, very calculated. And there's something that's coming along the lines, right, for you. So, for example, you're in school, right? And you are working, you start working on like a company or something. You start building a company, a startup or something, and you decide to drop out to do it. That's a terrible idea. That's not a good idea. What would a good idea look like? So, if you're working on a startup, you've raised venture capital, or you've raised enough capital from investors to be able to, cover the cost of you running your operation and feed yourself and take care of yourself, like giving yourself salary and stuff, like that, or you've got a lot of traction. Yeah, that makes sense. Like, think about Mark Zuckerberg. Like, he didn't drop out of school when he started Facebook. He dropped out of school after he couldn't balance doing Facebook and doing Harvard at the same time. That's literally the only reason. Otherwise, he's even said it in interviews himself that he wishes that he could have finished university. If you think of anyone, there's very, very few people that honestly take these stupid risks, but it's very romanticized, especially like you hear it like on, I don't know, I think you might hear it on motivational videos, right? You go, yeah, you need to take risks, you need to bet on yourself, you need to do all this. And yes, you should bet on yourself, yes, you should believe on yourself, but you shouldn't be stupid about it, right? Like, you should be very calculated. And that doesn't mean having a plan B, right? Just to make sure. What I mean is, if you're going to take a big risk on something, you want to make sure that it's actually going to work. Like, yeah. The only other example I can think of actually is someone that took a bit of a crazy risk was Ryan Breslow from Bolt, but he went to Stanford, and he if you go to any of the top schools in like America, you can, and you drop out, that's probably almost as valued as, you know, studying and graduating, because of the fact that the hardest part of those universities is most likely is just getting in, because then you're among that small group of population that's actually gotten in, so you're smart enough, you know, to do the work that you're trying to get into. So yeah, hedge your bets. You don't need to take stupid risks and drop everything in life to go pursue something crazy. Like, you want to do something and be calculated about it, and yeah, do a good risk analysis. But you also don't want to do an over risk analysis, meaning most people's risk analysis are generally pretty off. People are very, very, very bad at calculating risks. They often weigh them more than they actually are. Yeah. So yeah, you don't have to do stupid things. You can bet on yourself without being stupid about it. You can take risks, right? Because there is some risk still involved, right? Like, if you're starting to do something, like even if you're starting like a YouTube channel, and you're like in university, you know, you are still taking a risk, because you're taking time out of things that you could have done. There is always an opportunity cost. There's always, and generally the cost is either time or capital, one of the two, right? And in either case, it's an upside, right? That you're taking a risk on. You're taking a risk on, hey, I'm going to invest, I don't know, let's say 2 hours a week or 2 hours a day or something on a YouTube channel, and instead of going and partying's fun, right? Like, to anyone that enjoys partying, they'll tell you that they enjoy it. So you're sacrificing that. You're still making a sacrifice, but you're not being stupid about it, because if you do the right things and it works out, then yeah, sure, you can take that risk comfortably. But if it's not in that position yet, then you shouldn't be crazy about it and drop everything in your life that is working to pursue something that is not working. So yeah, that's the fourth lie, is that you need to take stupid risks and drop out of school or quit your job. Like, not a good idea. It's really not a good idea. And even Ben Francis will tell you this. He's the founder CEO of Gymshark. He will tell you that, I mean, he worked at Pizza Hut, right, whilst he was building Gymshark, and he dropped out of university only after the company had gotten to 250K in revenue within the first year, which is pretty astronomical growth, right? That's pretty fast growth. Only then did he like consider saying, okay, yeah, fine, I'll stop and just pursue this thing. Like, that makes sense, but he didn't do, and he was still working at Pizza Hut while even though he was doing this money, he was working at Pizza Hut, going to school, and still doing Gymshark. You know, you don't have to take stupid risks. You don't have to make it romantic. It's like, that's how most of these things actually work. And finally, 5 is that school is a waste of time or a bad idea. You should just completely skip it and go work and do something else. I was like, okay, if you're in the US, maybe this advice doesn't apply to you as much, but I still think it kind of does. And I think this is really stupid advice still, right? Because yes, while I'm not a big fan of the idea that you kind of, you know, of the way the system is built, it makes sense for most people to go to university. Like, I'm not the biggest like advocate of it, but I will say that it makes sense for most people to do it. And the reason why is because think about the time you're going to spend anyway, right? At least you're going to be doing something, right, productive. And at the end, you'll get a degree, and at the bare minimum, you'll be able to get a job that can help satisfy your living requirements so that you can pursue the things that you are interested in. Also, that university will give you that experience of, you know, we'll give you that free experience of, you know, pursuing your interests alongside pursuing your degree, right? And I think most people completely forget that, and they go, oh, you can just move to a neighborhood where there's college like students or university students and it's all the same. It's really not. It's just not, right? There's complete, I don't know if it's about the living situations in the US, but in the UK, like if you want to live in a university dormitory, you have to be a student at that university, and the student houses will be exclusively for students, right? So I think the advice that most people give that, oh, your school is just a waste of time. And look, the truth is that, look, most things in a degree are going to be useless. Some things are useful, right? Now, is it worth the cost? Different discussion, but obviously some people are going to say no, some people are going to say yes, depending on what you study. I think if you study like an engineering degree, it's probably worth it, right? If you're studying like a business degree, maybe it is worth it to an extent, right? Because you do learn some valuable things. Like we can't just pretend as if it's completely useless, right? Like there's like some of the things are actually useful. And I'm not the biggest, like again, I said, I'm not the biggest proponent of this, and I'm not a fan of the fact that the system kind of incentivizes students to take on this amount of debt. But if you live in a place like the UK where the debt structure is sort of reasonable in the sense that you don't have to pay back your debt until you earn over a certain threshold, I think that makes sense to to do it, right? Like you should do it, but you should pursue a degree that is, you know, actually going to be valuable to the marketplace, not just like some humanities degree where you can't actually get any work from it, but a degree where you can land work from it. So like if you pursued something like law or economics, maybe engineering, those kind of things. Not necessarily all STEM subjects. Some STEM subjects are a complete waste of time. I'm not going to start dissing people who do that because I'm not trying to start any feuds, but yeah, those are the 5 lies. First lie, that you have to start a business to become successful. BS, because you can literally become an employee. Second is following your passion, because passion is curiosity multiplied by progress divided by time, and not just something that's heartfelt. 3 is being patient, because you need to also look, you can't just look at the end result, you have to look at your initial conditions and your initial traction and see if things are working, and if not, make those decisions to pivot, right? And to keep like iterating until you can, and keep iterating as quickly as you can until you get to that next step, right? That makes sense for you. 4th is you have to take some stupid, crazy risks, you know, and bet on yourself, as opposed to hedging your bets safely. Not having a backup. That's not having a backup plan. Again, it is being calculated and being intelligent about how you take a risk. And 5 is that school is a waste of time and it's a bad idea. Again, not a big proponent of it, but really speaking, you kind of need it. Like you kind of do need to have it for the most part. You kind of need to have a degree. In a few years, that might change, where degrees will only become valuable if you're at like a master's level, because at this point most people have a degree, but you still kind of do need it for a lot of things still. Yeah, so those are my 5 those are the 5 lies that millionaires tell. There's definitely more that I could throw in there. I mean, if you want me to make a part 2, you can let me know in the comments. But that's all for today's video. If you enjoyed, please drop a like, and if you're new around here, subscribe, and I will see you for the next video. Peace.